I'm using generative AI to basically allow me to speak Mandarin, Korean, you name it, right? So what was concerning to me was 117 and 118, it says that person, because it says an and after 116, that persons depicted may be impersonations and that events depicted may not have actually occurred. My concern is my advertisement then has to say that this may be an impersonation or may and be events that may not have actually occurred. In other words, if I say on the bottom, I have my good housekeeping seal and I admit that I did the speech in English, but I've used generative AI to move me to say Hindu, do I meet the requirements of 112 through 118?
Well, I have to think about that here for a minute. A heavy question, Mr. Judiciary Chairman of the committee.
No, I'm not Judiciary Chairman.
No. I'm saying Mr. on the Judiciary. And
Yeah.
anyway, so I think the idea that it would, the way that it reads, it does say that you'd have to put something on persons depicted may be impersonations and events depicted may not have actually occurred. I'm amenable to the committee. If they don't like that, I'm fine with the amendment to strike that if that's so the will. I think the idea really was to just to ensure that people felt comfortable enough that it really made it very clear. But I'm open to the will of the committee. If the committee so chooses, I'm completely fine with. If I would ask that we do keep lines 115 and 116 that says generative artificial intelligence was used to make part of the content, part of this content.
Yeah. So Representative Thomas, I think 113 and 114 saying, hey, it's me, meaning that I'm acknowledging, yes, my name. And then 115 and 16, to your point, I'm acknowledging I'm using generative AI.
Yeah.
Is there a way in 117, and I know we have several members of Judiciary on our committee. I know Representative Holcomb, Representative Evans, Representative Oliver. I'm technically on it, but then that would mean I'd have to self-identify as a lawyer. Is there any possible way in 117, and I'll ask my lawyer friends, that the and can become an or? And maybe that solves it, but I'll open it up right now. Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm probably misunderstanding this. I just started reading about this artificial intelligence seal of compliance we were just talking about. So I'm reading on down here through, I guess, the next page, 112, 113. So is that something that you would only use if you were using some kind of something that was not valid, that was fake?
It's for an opt-in. You can opt in and choose to say, you know what, I as my campaign, and I would opt into this, that I as my campaign will use responsible generative AI, and as such, these are the things I have to agree to. Does that address your question, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I guess I'm not reading it all correctly. I'm reading there on like line 111, where the and starts. The campaign advertisement clearly states the name of the candidate or candidates or campaign committee, blah, blah. And then B on 115, that generative artificial intelligence was used to make part or all of the content of the campaign advertisement. I'm reading. I'm sure I'm skipping some words there, but it almost sounds like to me, I'm sure you're correct, but it almost sounds like you'd only use this if you were using some kind of deep fake stuff in it.
Well, no, I think what it is it gets back to the original premise, which is on line 108, and that's a candidate or candidates committee may affix this artificial seal of compliance. And in order to do that, you're going to agree that you're going to do certain things, and one of them is to provide these two disclaimers. One is, and it's not about what you mean. There's some downstream things that I think will happen that I'd like to talk through, but I'll get to it in a minute.
Well, may I ask you another question? If I may.
Yeah.
Let me cut you off here, the author, but I just want to make sure this is probably the end of it. So if you have used some, it says on 115 that generative artificial intelligence was used to make part of it. So if you have used that in a mailing that goes out, if you have used some of that, and you use this artificial or whatever the thing's called, the seal.
The seal, yeah.
You can do that with that seal. So you can send out a mailer on you, for example, and have some fake stuff in there. But wouldn't that look to the person that receives it like, oh, this must be true because it's got this seal of approval on there?
So, okay.
I'm missing something. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I really kind of we presented this a little different from the way that I was prepared. So, but I'm completely all right with the question. So I think you got to go back a page, if you don't mind, Chairman Parsons. Okay. So what this does is it allows the commission to create an artificial seal of compliance, okay? So it's to be used for campaign advertisement. It's to be used and it defines what campaign advertisement is. And then it also defines what deepfakes are, okay? Then you get to your page and it starts talking about what the candidate, when they sign the affidavit, this is what they're saying that they will do. You don't have to opt into this. This is not something that's required for you to do if you don't want to. But if you want to use the seal and you want to do something I think that says you're going to be a good actor,
I see it now. Thank you.
then you have this option available to you. But there's nothing. It's not mandatory. But it does have in sections lines 126 through 132 provisions. If you use that seal and you haven't prescribed to the things if you haven't agreed then sign the affidavit, what would happen to you if you use that seal without proper permission? And additionally, in lines 133 through 138, it discusses what happens if you were to break those those rules that are set forth in that affidavit. Additionally, it says it gives the commission if there's some additional rules that they feel like that needs to happen, that is available. I think it was kind of to try to set up a way to help people that want to be good, that want to show, hey, this is something that you can trust, that they have that option available to them. So I hope that. And here's the other thing. Let's just, because we always talk about what happens. Well, I'm going to throw another scenario out to you here real quick. What happens if a deep fake is put out on you, but let's just say a deep fake is created about you for whatever reason, whatever heinous, whatever it is, right? If there's not that seal there, at least that gives whoever the candidate is that they had the deep fake created about them, at least there's an opportunity to say, look, this isn't a trusted organization. They haven't signed onto this agreement, this kind of pact. And the other thing is, if they do use the seal, it gives Campaign Transparency Finance Commission the ability to come say, this is not a legit organization. They are not on our list. And it gives some authority to them to take a look at using that seal inappropriately. And so I thought it was kind of an interesting way to address an issue if you do have a deep fake brought up, against you.
Okay. Man, just one more, just to clarify.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so I think I'm getting it now. So somebody running against any of us could get this, and they have to agree to these things.
Correct.
And that if they use artificial intelligence to use something, or if they do that, let's see, where did I read that? That artificial intelligence was used to make part or the content of using artificial intelligence doesn't necessarily mean you're doing anything wrong.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong.
That's right. Okay, and if you are doing something wrong and you've got this seal, then other parts of the bill tells what kind of action can be taken.
Yeah, and I would challenge everybody in this room. I don't ever want to create any type of content. We all have tough elections. This isn't an easy process, but I would never want to create an image of anybody that uses their likeness, their voice, their mannerisms, create video of you saying things that you didn't say in places that you weren't. And there's no requirement. You don't have to do this, but I think that this was Chairman Jones' it was the beginning of your brainchild, and I tried to draw it to an end here, or at least put it on a piece of paper. But I think that whether what side of the aisle you're on, if we can all agree that, hey, we're gonna set the standard, we're gonna say, be leaders in this, we're gonna do these certain things, I think it creates some credibility, and I think we could use a little election system that literally can have your candidate. I'm not sure if any of y'all are aware, and most of you probably are since you're all political people here, but during the New Hampshire primary, there was a phone call that came out with Joe Biden's voice telling people not to vote. That sounds really, really scary to me. whether it's your candidate or your candidate, whoever's candidate. Imagine calling someone 2 days before an election, saying certain things that may dissuade voters. That's what this bill is about. It's at least trying to take an attempt at it, because right now we've got nothing.
I appreciate
So,
that.
yeah.
Well, that seal, would it actually look like some kind of a seal?
We were thinking the profile picture of Don Parsons.
Chairman Jones suggested I put your likeness on the seal, and
Well, my only concern about that, it's not really a concern here yet. I completely misunderstood the first part I asked about, but I guess, I do have something of a concern if an opponent then goes through this process and gets this seal of compliance and puts that on his or her campaign piece. I just, and people don't read these things anyway. They look at the pictures and they look about the headlines on. That's all for the most part, that's all they look at. And they see that Joe Blow, who's running against me, has this seal. I just fear that gives that person some kind of credibility that they probably, if they're running against me, I know they don't deserve, but that they really should.
So if
they
they're,
shouldn't be getting.
but then that gets into the whole point of the definition of. Well, let's put this two different ways. There's nothing that actually, in a way, is I think a positive thing, and I know that sounds really weird, but I'll explain to you why. That's going to make you probably want to go out and get the same seal.
Well, I would.
Exactly.
Have to, yeah.
So now, if you got the seal that he's got, who's got any more than the other? But y'all are going to be held to the same set of rules, right? So,
Okay, we can answer my question.
yeah, and like I said, I hope. You know what I hope? I hope you go out and get that seal, and I hope whoever's running against you says, "Hey, you know what? There's some value to that. I'm going to go get it too." And then now all of a sudden we can hold each other accountable, and there's a way to do it. That doesn't necessarily drum. It's not a brush with the First Amendment, right? So this is a really nice piece, and I believe it or not, I actually put way too much thought on this, but I think it'll work. So
Okay. Thank you.
Chairman Parsons, there was a hit piece on me 2 years ago, 5 footnotes, and I do believe most readers believe that footnotes makes it more credible. But I was someone who thought, well, if it's a hit piece on me, I might as well go and look at the footnotes. Well, it turns out the footnotes were completely bogus. Like, not even in the ballpark. Those footnotes never even mentioned my name. But to your point, I do agree. Certain people will put things on certain pieces to just make it seem more credible. That stated, one of the things that I just want to mention to the committee and remind them, the reason we thought about this seal was the challenge of actually finding the deep fake, the person who actually created it. It's no different than ransomware. We never actually find the person in Russia that's doing it, but we know that it's occurring. We thought, was there a way to create a good actor and give a good actor, I'll say, the benefit of the doubt, as long as they go through the commission, get the seal, and then agree to do the things that are on 112 through 118 with that. Oh, sorry.
may I coattail on that, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
In addition, what it does is it creates an opportunity where if you have a bad actor who's doing certain things, or say they put that seal out, they have to say who their name is. They have to do that as part of this, right? And then it gives an opportunity for the Campaign Transparency and Finance Commission to come back and say, this is not an organization that has agreed to this. It is a level of protection that you can get, I think, by having that seal available. So again, it's a little bit different. I understand that, but we're in 2024, and I'm trying to think forward-thinking way of addressing issues. So,
Chairman Blackman, I think, wants to talk to you about possibly a revenue opportunity here.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative. I'm going to try to ask this question in a good way. It's probably not going to come off. We may get this offline. A little bit of what mentioned last time, but if could you walk me through potentially the differential if right now somebody were to print off some comments that I didn't say with a signature printed on there that was mine, and they go to a community event and they start handing that out, and it's completely phony, bogus, fake. How would something like that be dealt with in the legal world now, versus something that was maybe AI related, and then what does your bill do to maybe change something like that? Is that a terrible question?
No, I was ready for that question.
All right, I thought you might.
I wrote it right here. If Shaw gets into you about this, please refer to definition on lines 34-35. I mean, you think I'm kidding. Look at lines 34,
All right.
35.
All right. It wasn't a
But
trick
no, and I don't.
question.
It
I
was.
can promise you.
I'm trying to have a little fun here. This isn't easy, okay? But if you look, it says, is created through technological means rather through the ability of another person physically or verbally impersonate such a person. So I think the idea is actually, this is a little bit different now I think about it, but I think the idea is we're trying to really keep it to things that are created through artificial, AI, generative technology. So not so much like a Xerox copy's been around of you saying whatever to the end of time. I mean, that's just been around. I mean, 200 years ago, they could just drew pictures instead of Xerox. But
and that's kind of my question is why you don't, do we not consider applying much of what's already used to, in a criminal situation like that here? Or am I just, I get the technology component, I get it's all, AI and everything. I just wondered if there was a quasi wheel created somewhere. And I know how hard this is. This is a lot of great hard work you've put in. So I'm not trying to in any way.
No, and I think that when you define deepfake, we have it defined on 32 and 33 as video recording, video file, sound recording, sound file, electronic image, or photograph. So, I guess maybe that what you're trying to hook into is the electronic image part of it, right? I don't know. That's more of a question.
Well, I'm just saying that, bad actors been able to do things to, say for, in more of a manual way than an electronic way. And that was just simply my question.
No, I think
it's just a follow-up.
I actually think it's a really good question. And I appreciate you bringing it.
If we didn't have your bill, how would we handle a deep fake violation in an election scenario?
I don't know if there is any way that it's directly addressed right now. I don't know, but I don't mean to lean on the chairman here, but are you aware of any other alternate path available?
So, Chairman Blackman, this started to resonate as what happened in Turkey in 2023, and we saw what happened in their elections. And the feeling for me was the movement from the EU over to the United States wasn't all that far, especially since we had a presidential election occurring in 2024. What was discouraging to me was I called up Mr. Ahmadi and I said, walk me through someone uses generative AI to put a male candidate soliciting a prostitute through a video. What right now is, the way that individual, other than literally coming out and trying to tell everyone, right, I did not do such an act, what is it that we have? Because the way that I read the commission's rules right now, effectively it's a $500 fine probably about 6 months from now, and they'll adjudicate it. And I'm not picking on the commission, but this is just how it works, sometime after the election. So effectively, it's an opportunity cost for the person who's being the bad actor to say, you know what, I want to take out candidate A. I can go ahead and use this technology in a way that we've never seen in elections, right? To just suddenly make up videos and sound recordings and things like that, and then not have the ability for them to come in and act, I want to put immediately, and I'm putting that into quotes. So that's why we had, within the 90 days, being able to allow them to come out and act on it with them, within concert with the SEB. We're actually asking them to come out and them say, no, candidate A did not do such an act. We of course want that type of validation, I hope that helps to answer why we did it. But in terms of what's available today, we would have to use some archaic rules that would probably be 6 months from now.
Right. I get what you're saying there. And again, I'm not sure I'm articulating what I'm thinking here, but would this be handled in a criminal way if it was a non-AI related event in an election environment? Would this be handled in there's nothing to deal with this in a non-criminal unless
Representative Oliver, Representative Evans, Representative Holcomb answer that. They know more about defamation and slander, especially the standard by which we live by as elected officials versus, I'll say, a common citizen. But Representative Oliver, I'll recognize you.
And then I'll take it up too much time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
The fact that neither President Biden nor Taylor Swift is able to protect himself or herself from this defines how difficult this is.
It is. Thank you.
A possible criminal conviction is not going to be timely. A possible criminal complaint's not going to be timely, nor is a action for slander. Somebody put in one of the campaigns against me is that I'd refuse to take a drug test. Well, made it up, fact, lie, but I didn't choose to file a defamation case. And because of the cost and the timely. I think, having said that, I think the value of this is still really insignificant to me. And I think that we ought to perfect this in the best way we can, because accountability, criminal accountability, should apply if you're using a deep fake to create a lie. It's not going to be timely, though. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. And just say, I'm very ambivalent about your seal of approval, because I think that's just going to be another lie used by the fake person.
Thank you. And may I'd actually like to make a comment. I think, Chairman Blackman, if you refer to lines, it was lines 41 through 43, I think really more outlines what it is. A person commits the offense of election interference with deepfake if he or she creates, publishes, broadcasts, streams, or uploads deepfake within 90 days of an election with the intent to deceive. And I think the big thing, is the intent to deceive. I mean, that's from my understanding in legal definitions, and I'm not on judiciary, but intent to deceive is a pretty high bar. Additionally, I would say that the biggest one is broadcast, streams, and uploads. I think that really is where you're going to get the maximum amount of distribution. All right, thank you. There's a couple other questions, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, that came up during the last committee hearing that I had noted. Representative Hong asked a question about why is 90 days important, and I want to explain that's the 90 days. As it was been explained to me through this process, it's a date tied to an election. So it really keeps this very narrow. I think if something happens 6 months out, it's less likely to have an impact. I've got some time to recover. But if something is within 90 days, then, it really has a lot more of an impact because it's closer. And I think this helps if it was to go through judicial review, it would, I think it will help allow this to survive judicial review. Let's see here. I had another one from Representative Holcomb. I know you and I agreed in the last meeting. I tried to give you some injunctive relief. I hope maybe that was a little bit in line with what it is that you would like. And that we were in agreement, so it is in the bill now, just so you know. I think those were the two big ones that I hadn't addressed yet. So.
Thanks, Reverend Strong. Speaking of Representative Holcomb, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm certainly supportive of what you're trying to do. I have a little more comfort with the disclosure aspect and the seal than I do with the crime. And the reason is I think the application of this will be really, really challenging. And what I'm specifically referring to are lines 41 through 43. And that is the creation of a new crime of a person commits the offense of election interference with a deepfake if he or she creates, publishes, broadcasts, streams, or uploads a deepfake within 90 days of an election with the intent to deceive, so some type of mens rea, one or more electors for the purpose of reducing a candidate's chance of being elected in an election or otherwise influencing the result of an election or referendum. I think, and I understand what you're trying to do, but I think the application of this by the courts would be extraordinarily difficult because it's very either overbroad or vague in terms of what they're trying to do, and others may disagree with that, but that's my reading, particularly sub 2 of otherwise influencing the result of an election or referendum. And then a specific question or a hypothetical would be, if somebody were to create and then publish something 91 days out, they'd be fine, correct?
The way it's written, that's correct.
All right. How would you interpret something that's already online, something that already exists? So let's say something that was published pre-90 days, but then it gets shared. Does that fall under this creates, publishes, broadcasts, streams, or uploads? Would that be publishes if you're sharing it, like retweeting, if that's still a word, that kind of thing?
The way I read it, no. I don't believe it. We don't specifically prescribe a retweet or reshare. It's the person that actually puts the content onto the internet, I guess, to begin with. I'll
Okay,
use the
so
term internet or media. I guess maybe media is probably the better term.
I think what I heard you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you would interpret publish as being just the individual that uploaded it to begin with.
That's correct. So kind of, I think like a newspaper, right? Say a newspaper publishes an article. Just because I make a Xerox of that article doesn't mean that I was the one that published it.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be a real challenge in terms of just there's two sides of this. There's the legal side of getting the language exactly right to where it's meaningful and useful and helpful. The second is the practical side of how do we actually kind of enforce it and move this along. So I'm not terribly comfortable with just the current language that we have. I'd be happy to hear if somebody doesn't have a concern about this maybe being overbroad or kind of vague and challenging for the courts to apply. But I'll go back to where I started. I'm supportive of what you're trying to do. We want to make sure that the language works.
And as we continue through the legislative process, if you have a recommendation how you'd like to structure that language, I'd be more than amenable to hear.
Thank you. The other question that I have is for the seal part. Is there a reason why leadership committees wouldn't be included in that as well? Because those influence elections too.
My understanding is, and this, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't pretend to be an expert on all of this, okay? But my understanding is leadership committees, do they fall under campaign transparency? And I mean, are they under that department? I mean, is that the commission that regulates?
They're in the code, and my understanding is that the commission does regulate all of those and the parties because they have to upload campaign finance reports as well. But
Well, then in that case, I guess, I mean, let's see. I'm sorry. Let's go to the line. Could you point me to the line that you're talking about specifically?
it's in the section on the artificial intelligence seal. And here's what I'm trying to work through.
Yeah.
And granted, some of this is hypotheticals. Is if people want to work around this, could they just work around it by saying, I'm not doing it by myself or through my candidate committee, but through some other entity, like dark money kind of things, independent expenditures, leadership committees, other committees which are made for the express purpose of influencing elections. Do we want to capture them as well, or is it just the individual candidate committees that you have in mind?
And to be clear, that's to to have that ability to use the artificial seal of intelligence?
Yes.
Okay. I would say, I guess, thinking more maybe practically on that, if a leadership committee wants to use that seal, I think that they should just have to sign the same affidavit that anybody else does and get to use the seal, dark money, the same way. I hope dark money does. That'd be great, because if they want to be tied to these rules, which are good ethical rules, then I would tell them, come on with it, but I guess because it's an opt-in issue, not a mandated issue,
Right.
Anybody that would be under the purview of the campaign transparency should be able to use the seal. So if you don't read it to be able to do that, I think it should. I don't disagree with you on that.
Okay. And then last question, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Of course.
What was the thought behind 50,000 going back to the crime as the the amount? Is it just to be
Okay,
a
so
massive disincentive? Like, I did just a quick survey, like perjury is 1,000, just as an example. So like 50,000 is
How much-
markedly higher than perjury. So,
how much does your campaign normally cost?
I don't do very much, so I'm like
Well,
an outlier. I
good
put
for
up a
you.
yard sign the night before, so, yeah.
I think my first one ran around, I think it was about 70,000. So if you're going to destroy somebody's campaign and put a deep fake out on, let's make it hit the wallet.
I got you. So your idea is to be roughly equivalent to what a campaign costs for?
For a House seat, obviously, Senate seats cost more. We didn't want to start getting into hierarchy of based off what level of campaign that you're hitting and what the fine is. But yeah, I think 50,000 is enough to get somebody's attention. So,
Okay, that's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman. Thanks.
Of course, Representative Holcomb. Just something to think about. We want to get through this faster because we got 3 more left and we have 5 minutes. Possibly at the end of 41, we put the word initially. It sounded to me, Representative Thomas, that you and Representative Holcomb were agreeing that it was the initial creation, publication, broadcast, stream, et cetera.
Yeah.
So maybe the word initially after the word she starts to solve that. I'll let
I'd be amenable to
Yeah.
that if.
Representative Holcomb, does that start to address the issue? Oh, sorry.
Still don't know that I'm comfortable overall, but that addresses that point.
Okay.
So I would support that. Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you. And then just as an update, David Amati got back to me. Leadership committees are underneath the purview of the commission.
Okay.
So, all right, thank you. Chairman Williamson.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I know we're running out of time, but to Representative Thomas, I just want to thank you for the efforts. We're wading into this whole new world that you described of artificial intelligence, which in itself is self-descriptive because it's artificial, and that's what we're dealing with, is fake news. But is this basically all your attempt is similar to the old good housekeeping seal of approval, right? You familiar with that?
Section 5 is basically what that is.
Which begs, so am I correct though, when you
Yes.
say Section 5? So basically, this just means you're doing things right and others might not be.
And you're willing to set yourself to a certain bar and accountability standard, and you get something that says, hey, this is, legitimized
Right.
group that,
Okay, so my question is, are the penalties, and again, I don't have the code in front of me, nor would I really understand what I was reading in the criminal code, but lines 130 through 132 on page 6, and similarly on the next paragraph on page 7, are these the same penalties that would apply for somebody using, as an example, the good housekeeping seal of approval on a product or service without permission?
I can't, I don't know what the penalties are
Okay.
for that. So
I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I think
So-
the way we broke it out is we have campaign transparency. If someone does use that seal, they have the ability to go after them for that. And then on the flip side of it, they use the seal. Say somebody does something that's really, they use the seal and it was inappropriate. Campaign transparency can look at it. They're not going to say, well, you're a felony, $50,000 and 5 years in jail. It's, it'd be prescriptive to whatever, the level of offense is. So.
Well, I'm just trying to draw it back to a parallel, to an example that we all could be familiar with. And again, an example of a well-known and long-time use seal of approval that products and services can apply to their, whatever they're selling with permission. And what I'm trying to say is, it apparently, this is a methodology that's been used for a long time in the United States of America with a
Yes,
degree of
yes.
success.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
And then the follow-up question, you've already said you don't know the answer to it, nor do I, is would the similar penalties apply if you misused for that example I gave you?
Speaking completely without knowledge, I would say that if you use a seal that you weren't entitled to use, for example, I have an engineering seal. If somebody else seals a drawing, use an engineering seal. That's a
good example.
Yeah, that's a very big offense.
Well,
And if I use my seal irresponsibly, then I'm held accountable to the Board of Engineering and Land Surveyors. So that's the same thing that's basically happening here.
So again, is it not true then that this methodology's been used on many other products, services, and professions successfully, and this is one attempt to try to get our arms around the tide that's coming our way with these deep fake actors that are.
It is, yeah. I think that's a yes. To keep it very simple, yes. Thank you. Great
Thank you,
question.
Mr. Chairman. Our anchor leg is Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative. I also applaud what you're trying to do here. I have concerns, some expressed before, most remain. My main ones, though, center around, are there resources in Campaign Finance Commission to handle this? What do they think it would take? What is the AG's office going to do with this? Do they think that this gives them something that they could prosecute? And so that's a preface, and my question is, some to you and then some to the chairman, is a process question. Are we planning to have somebody from ethics? Are you planning to have somebody from the AG's office come in? And then secondly, which would be maybe more to you, Representative, is do we have anybody that's dealt with this that could come in and talk to us about, could you figure out who it was? Did you try to use the defamation laws? Just sort of the real world practicalities of both, has it happened, and not having a remedy, and then could the remedy we're trying to create actually work through the people that would have to implement it?
Well, just to say, yeah, I have spoke with Campaign Transparency. I have spoke with the AG's office. Obviously, and I'm not going to speak on their behalf. I think I do believe that they understand what it is, and it is a bigger ask. I mean, it is. We're asking them now to investigate deep fakes, and you know, whenever you have that, and this is very specialized. Like we're starting to get into some, like I said, a whole new realm of investigative, not just authority but ability. So, is there going to be some more burden on the AG's office and campaign? Yeah, I think you can say that definitively. What that impact is, that you know, I can't answer today.
Could we bring them in though? Because I think all of our agencies, when we write a law that says you have to do something, they're going to say, we'll figure it out. But I'd like to really talk to them about the practicalities of whether they can and how they would go about doing it. Not whether they can, but whether they can do it successfully. And I think only they can answer that. And since this is creating a new felony, which I don't think is something, I'm not on duty non-civil, so I don't know how often we do it, but I don't feel like it's something we should do haphazardly without talking to a prosecutor. And so
Yeah.
can we, I guess is the question, can we have those witnesses here to talk to them before we move forward with a bill like this?
So Representative Evans, 100%. I think the work this body's done this week, the work the body did last week in conjunction with Judy, is telling us, I think, what we all are probably coming to the same conclusion. We may want to break this down into a smaller group of people that are on this committee and really hit this bill between now and next Wednesday simultaneously with the AG's office. I would even argue, I've been pinging the GBI cybercrime group, right? Making sure, because we're literally in uncharted waters, and we just need to make sure I think the point you're trying to make is, let's not try to create something that we either can't enforce, we don't have the resources to enforce, or frankly, we're running after ghosts. And I think the point that was made last week in terms of the first section of the bill, I'm not suggesting is all running after ghosts, but there's a lot of ghosts there because they're going to go deep and hide. Hence the idea of Section 5 in terms of, is there a way to create something where you're opting in and people can start to trust? But I concur with Chairman Parsons, there's probably going to be, I'll say, bad use of a good actor seal, for lack of a better phrase, Chairman Parsons, and I just saw Representative Oliver say the same thing. So I still think there's a lot for us to uncover here, and I think, thank God, we're only in day 13, and we'll keep pressing ahead. So, yeah. Representative Thomas, any last words that you need to say?
Not on 986.
I know we were planning on doing 988, but we came up against a hard stop. I'd
Okay.
like to apologize to Cameron. I know you were here for that. Our apologies, sir, but we're going to try and knock through 986 as much as we can, okay? Are there any other further comments? I appreciate the committee's time. We're adjourned.